Hello, everyone. Already have a bunch of people coming in on Zoom and on LinkedIn. We will get started in just a little bit, just waiting for a few more people to join. Welcome also to Firefly's note taker.
Great to have you here.
Yeah.
It's always good to see it.
I wonder how many note takers will end up joining.
Half of the other participants.
The number keeps going up. Anytime I think, oh, we should start now, a couple more people join.
That's a good sign.
Yes.
Very good sign. Okay, I think we will go ahead and start now. And anyone who misses the beginning can always watch the replay, which will be coming to your inboxes. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's event. We'll be hearing from Lotte and Isabella from Online Dialogue about the intersection of actual research psychology and CRO, rather than pop psychology and the general best practices that we may see on LinkedIn or other places. Lotte started in marketing before studying psychology later on, so she'll be sharing from her business, customer journey perspective, whereas Isabella has an academic background focused in research, so she will be sharing her experience doing research in an applied setting. And I'm not going to take much more of their time. If you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to leave them in the webinar chat, and we will get to them later on in the session. But for now, please welcome Isabella and Lotte.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carmel, for that great introduction. We are very happy to talk about psychology today and what makes our job so interesting, and hopefully inspire you a little bit as well. So, as mentioned, I am Lotte, and I'm here today with my colleague Isabella. We are psychologists at Online Dialogue, with each our own background and our own skill set, but combined we will make a great team. And today we are asked to give this session on why you should hire us for your team. Well, I'd like to start with a little bit information about Online Dialogue. We are a dedicated CRO agency. We work for experimentation and validation. We're founded in 2009, so we have 16 years of experience. What makes us unique is the combination of data and psychology, and we'll go into that a little deeper later on. We are thought leaders, so we often speak at international events or in webinars, and we well know the CRO landscape. We also have our own academy. So we like to train other people, educate them, and we've been doing this for years now as well. Very good to say that we are a award-winning CRO agencies. So we won quite some awards for experiments, but also as an agency. So we are very proud of that. And at Online Dialogue, we work with experts. So we work multidisciplinary to get all the depth of every expertise instead of just one CRO specialist doing everything. And that's what makes it so much fun. As mentioned before, we combine data and psychology, and this is how we were founded. So we have two founders, one being a true OG web analyst, and the other a psychologist. And they found out that when you mix those two things together, you get better validations through experiments and research. So psychology is definitely the core of our DNA. Our motto at Online Dialogue is validation in every organization, because we truly believe that this is the way to grow.
However,
But
we do, I think, have our own motto,
Yeah.
and that's from intuition to evidence. And yeah, this is also the core of our talk today. So really how psychologists are trained to go from intuition to evidence, or rather not how to rely on intuition, but how to rely on evidence. So today, how will our talk look like? We will go through the talk using 4 statements that we stand by and we really believe in, and that we think is really important to be aware of when you do or want to do successful CRO. But first, before we go into the statements, I want to talk or start with a question I get asked a lot of time, which is, what do psychologists even do? Especially at parties when I talk about I optimize websites, and yeah, I'm a psychologist, I'm a researcher, and they're like, okay, what do you do? Because usually when people think about psychologists, they think of Freudian's couch, right? They think of psychoanalysis, and they're like, ooh, I can't talk anymore because now you're going to analyze every word that I say. Which is, I mean, for a large part true. We still have a lot of clinical, or maybe not a lot enough clinical psychologists, but the original kind of talky psychology is still there. But I think it's very important for people to remember that modern psychology is really all about raising researchers, and especially then in the field of human behavior. So it's really that we are trained to understand and predict behavior, not just by listening to people and what they're having to say, but by using research, which means that we're really well trained in experiments, statistics, observation and measurements, interviews, qualitative methods, but also quantitative methods, brain and cognition research, social influence and group behavior, learning, habits, motivation, decision-making, all of these things. So we tend to be really good researchers, which is perfect, because, yeah, our field basically trains us not to trust first explanation and to prove things with evidence instead of just vibes or your intuition. So instead of reporting what users do, we are big on explaining why behavior happens, and we are taught to connect behavior in a plausible to plausible drivers, making insights more actionable, which is what leads to our first statement. Your CRO needs a good researchers, and psychologists are the best, especially when it comes to human behavior, because behind all of those clicks are obviously humans, people with thoughts and hopes and dreams. And even though not every hope and dream is very explicit when they're searching for a new dress to wear, but it goes, a lot deeper than sometimes the clicks imply. So this is our first statement, and I think we already proved why we're quite good researchers. We're trained for it, and like any people that are training for anything, the more time you put into it, the better you become. Yeah. I mean, we can all cook, but chefs are a lot better at it because they put in all of the training and all of the work. Everybody can say something about behavior because we all behave and we all think, and we can all rationalize why other people behave and think. But because we took the time to research it a little bit deeper, obviously, it's really good to have a good psychologist on your team. Going into our second statement, which is confirmation makes you feel good, falsification makes you better. And this is all about going from confirmation to falsification. And let me just quickly kind of explain what we mean with confirmation and falsification. It means that because we're human, most people, and so also most CRO teams and the people in the CRO teams, instinctively look for confirmation of what we believe in. So we have an assumption, And we're really good at finding data points to confirm that assumption, to confirm what we already believe in, because it's just really easy. Most people are familiar with confirmation bias. That is exactly this. And I think that when you boil it down to what psychologists are trained in doing their training and their years of research, is that the core of psychological research is not confirmation, but falsification. So that means that you actively try to look for information that disproves your ideas instead of confirms your ideas. So instead of trying to look for evidence that confirms what you think, your mindset and your research, to do the opposite. So look for evidence that disproves your idea. Because if you take a look at kind of the mindset shift that happens when you go from, okay, I think X, can we show it's true, to what would need to be true for this idea to be wrong, it's radically different. And it really prevents you from confirmation bias. It forces humility. It reveals blind spots. It forces you to think about metrics beforehand, so no cherry picking of data. It makes you way more critical about yourself, but also about the ideas of others. And it protects you from falling in love with your ideas. So it really pushes you towards being a better researcher, to learning, and not just to earning, as we say. Like in CRO, you want to go for those wins, obviously. So you want to earn more money, you want to earn those tests, but you also have to learn. And the best way to learn is to falsify what you believe in. So what does this mean practically? The easiest way to falsify assumptions is to test them with proper hypotheses that can prove our assumptions wrong, so to falsify them. For example, if you have the assumption, social proof reduces hesitation. That's an assumption that is so broad that if you test something with just this as your rationale, almost any outcome can be interpreted as supporting it. And as I already said, we're very good at choosing the right metrics to confirm our beliefs afterwards. Instead, you need to write a proper hypothesis that shows that your assumption is falsifiable. So if you say, adding a most chosen option label next to Plan B will increase selection of Plan B significantly compared to control, with no increase in refund rate because users are hesitant, and this social proof label helps them to feel more secure. It's a lot longer, obviously, but it really makes it more actionable and falsifiable because it that's a hard word. Can't even explain it.
Operationalizes.
It operationalizes, thank you very much.
Sure.
It operationalizes social proof into a concrete change. It sets up a clear failure condition. So if refunds do drop or the selection of Plan B doesn't show positive uplifts, the hypothesis is directly threatened, and it's measurable. So it can be disproven with data. So before building a test, we always ask ourselves, what do we expect to happen? What would disprove that expectation? What could falsify it? And then what alternative explanation should we keep in mind? So this shift, I mean, I think for a lot of people that are listening right now, it's clear that we should have hypotheses, but it's really good to stop and think about hypotheses and which metrics to take into account that can falsify the belief and what alternative explanations there could be, because it makes you more critical beforehand instead of afterwards. So
yeah,
let's continue.
Statement 3. We don't share a magic list of tactics that will boost conversion or increase conversion. I think we've all seen it on LinkedIn, how to improve conversion with 20%, comment for the list, or people say, do how Coolblue, this Dutch company, is doing it. But it's completely human to look for shortcuts. And stakeholders want quick wins, competition is fierce, teams are busy, and not every organization has a very deep in-house CRO expertise. So a list of psychological tactics sounds perfect, right? A ready-made set of proven strategies that guarantee results. But a list like that ignores three realities. Human behavior is complex. We all know it. Every business has its own context and so its own audience. And the digital world changes really fast. So something that's been tested last year can already be different this year. So we always say that we don't have a ready set list of tactics or best practices. And let me give you some reasons why we do not share this list. Because a tactics list can accidentally reduce the conversion to implementing just tricks. And I think effective CRO is more data-driven. It's about analysis, analyzing user behavior, combine quantitative and qualitative insights, doing research, and then tailoring hypotheses to that specific situation. So let me give an example of that. So imagine you're a seller of magazine, newspapers, and other online and offline media, and you want to increase subscription. And you read this blog post like double your conversion, 10 best practices everyone should implement for their paywall. So they add a social proof label, most popular subscription.
My hypothesis from the slides before.
Yeah. So, and yes, initially that specific subscription sells more, but you might see other results for other labels, because you should take a more data-driven approach and take a look at motivations to buy from your customers. And for this, we have to dive in a little bit deeper and take a step back, look at the basics. Where do social proof tactics come from? And this is the self-determination theory. And it states that motivation depends on three needs: autonomy, need to be free to make your own decisions; competence, you want to feel capable and good at what you do; and social connection. So you need to feel connected to other people. And this is exactly where social proof comes from. And we as psychologists understand why social proof can work and what the mechanism is underneath. So now if you take this information back to the media seller example, and you think, why would people pay for news in the days where everything is online for free? A lot of information can be gathered from the internet. We found this research that looked at the correlation between different motivations and paying for news. And the research asked participants if they consume news to keep up to date on current topics, or to be entertained, or to promote personal growth, and to help them make decisions. But it turns out that none of these motivations were tied to a person's willingness to pay for news. However, when they asked participants if they consume news to fit in socially, they found that this was the main motivation related to person's social identity. And that was tied to the desire to pay for news. So the most important finding of the article was that people pay for news because it helps them maintain and promote their own social status among peers. Taking this back to the real world and back to our media seller, we looked at customer data from this Dutch magazine, Libelle and Margriet, and we noticed something interesting. Their customers didn't call themselves subscribers, but they called themselves members. So what they did is they changed the headline in the subscription options. And instead of saying choose your subscription, they said become a member. And this was a big win, but not only for this one magazine, because now we know from scientific literature and from customer data that motivation to pay for news is tied to the need to belong. And we could take this finding and copy it to all subscriptions of all labels they have, so all other newspapers. The deeper win wasn't just the tactic, it was the insight that the motivation is about belonging. and being part of a community, and that this was especially important to the context of new subscriptions.
Yeah, because if they would have just applied the best practice of, okay, a social proof label, then okay, yeah, the subscriptions of that specific subscription, so like the plan B, would have gone up. But now all of them went up, and they could use it not only for Isabella and Margriet, but for many more different forms of communication. And they really found like this interesting research line of, okay, even though we, as the boss of our media organization, think no, the proper way to address our readers is subscription holders, because that's what they are. They are members. We're not a club, but people really saw themselves as a member of a club, and this really changed also the mindset. So it's good to dive a little bit deeper if you do look for best practice, to ask yourself, okay, what is it coming from, and can we research a little bit more to get to the deeper finding?
Yeah. Another problem with just a list of tactics is that they pretend that these tactics are universal. But context is a deciding factor. Many teams fixate on competitor websites, especially big brands, and assume that copying them will work. But yet every company is different. It has a different audience, and those audiences have different motivations. It's a different industry, different product, different price point, and also different brand expectations. And a static list can't account for all these variables to be included. So let's take it back and see reviews and take a look at an example from reviews. So imagine you're a seller of very surprising sexual products, and you read everyone should use reviews on their product detail page. And you think, well, this might be a good idea, because buying these types of products bring a lot of discomfort and a lot of uncertainty to people. So they added reviews higher up on the page, and they saw a negative effect on transactions. Even though they used the most helpful reviews.
Yeah, they were the most listed as the most helpful, right?
Yeah. But still, it showed a negative response on transactions. So how is this possible? So what they did is they created a list of all the products that they placed the reviews on, placed it in a row, and see what the effect of the test was on that particular product. And start to notice something, that reviews that went well were often a little bit more emotional, while reviews that had the negative effects were more helpful in a traditional sense, like more functional. And this is important to know, because what makes a good review? Well, then you have to dive a little bit deeper into the mindset of your customer. So you have two types of shoppers, more rational shopper and a more emotional shopper. So let's say you want to buy a drilling machine at a DIY shop. Then it might be really nice to know that it fits very comfortably in your hand and it has 5 drilling options. But when you're shopping for a vibrator, is that really what makes you excited about it? You probably want to know what sensation it gives you rather than its function. So here you see a very big difference. Like if you're shopping for a drilling machine, it's more rational. And so a more functional description can really help. But when you're shopping for a vibrator, it's a little bit more emotional, and a more sensual loaded description might work better. So continued with a follow-up test and handpicked the reviews that were shown that were a little bit more emotionally charged. And then, well, if you read this one, you can kind of imagine someone saying it. It might give you a smile on the face, but at least I think it will make you a little bit more excited about the product than when it's stated that it has 5 drilling options.
Yeah.
So reviews can definitely work for you, And so social proof can definitely work for you, but you need to research what information is needed when and where for your specific customer. Just like any best practice and any tactics that is shared on LinkedIn or on other platforms, be very much aware that your audience is different and that you need to test it in your own context.
There are a lot of data points that you can look into, which we will dive a little bit later on into.
Yeah. So that's why at Online Dialogue, we don't work with tactics or best practices, but we work with a holistic framework with 5 overarching optimization strategies. So they are based on theory and a meta-analysis from over 10,000 experiments that we did. And they help you understand problems in a more broader perspective. So a problem can be that it's very hard to do the desired behavior, or you're focusing on the wrong elements, or maybe you're not completely in line with what the customer's goals and needs are. Or with the vibrator example, there might be a very high level of uncertainty about the product or about the process or about the organization. Or you just need to shift a little bit in how you present the options. This is what we use to generate and test hypothesis based on underlying drivers of behavior. So a framework really forces a more user-centric approach. So it pushes to understand that what are people trying to achieve, what is stopping them, and what do they need to feel more confident.
Yeah, and I think for this, it's really important to also say that this framework shouldn't come as a surprise, right? Like we all know things need to be easy, the attention needs to be on the right elements, people need to, feel motivated. So you need to speak to their motivation. They need to feel certain. But it's really when you go from using tactics and best practices through using a very clear framework like this, like, okay, we see a problem in the data. Let's, put our little ability hat on and see, okay, what is everything that can make it harder for the people here? Why are they dropping off? Why are they clicking back? Or, okay, maybe we're not speaking to the right motivation. So what are the hypotheses that we could write on all of these 5 optimization strategies that might shine a different light on the same problem, test those to see where the problem actually lies, and then you can further optimize. So like Lotte says, like it forces you to look a little bit more holistically to problems, but it also gives you a framework to work from. So obviously the set of best practices, they're very helpful because a lot of times we don't really know where to start. And that's why we really love using this framework, because it gives you a head start, like, okay, just look in these 5 directions and you're good to go. You can do so much with this.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our final statement, which is method beats hacks every single time. So a strong methodology really turns random wins into repeatable growth. And we, as psychologists, especially really believe in this because it's been drilled into us with the 5 drilling functions. Because team methodology is just a promise to follow rules, even when they're inconvenient. Like the same with cherry picking, the same with confirmation bias, the same with writing a proper hypothesis beforehand. It just forces you to think about the steps that maybe at the moment you don't want to think about because you just want to start testing, but you have to follow the methodological guidelines in order to have just a clean, reliable, and valid process. And that's really important because I think, as we all know, but A/B testing should not be about just applying tactics and seeing what sticks, A lot of people like to use the example of throwing spaghetti on the wall. So just throw a bunch of tests and just see what sticks, see what works for you. It's really just about doing proper scientific research. And we want to show, we already showed the overarching framework, but we want to show a couple of other frameworks that we use for our work, which really simplifies it and boils it down to very clean steps that you can take. Which is, the first one is that we work with a very strict process that we follow. The fact-act model, also called. And these are directly related to the empirical cycle, which is the cycle that all scientific research follows. So we kind of created our own little version of that at Online Dialogue that is easy to integrate with CRO programs. And you should read it as follows. So you have find. So here you should define the customer journey and its potential. What, where are you going to test, why, etc. Then you should analyze. So analyze behavior using data, research, setting up your first overarching hypotheses. Like I said before, you see where people are dropping off, you see where they're clicking back. Why is this happening? Use that psychological framework. Then create designs. We work multidisciplinary, so we have UX research that can do it for us, which is really nice. Luckily, we don't have to do it by ourselves. They create designs that, tests for the test based on these hypotheses, but they can also be designs not for A/B tests, but also for other forms of validation. So obviously, within CRO, we talk a lot about A/B tests because they're like the pinnacle of scientific testing, because it's randomized, it's controlled. But there are so many ways of validation that we also use, because A/B testing is just not always possible, either for money reasons or for time reasons or for traffic reasons. So you created your test, so you're gonna test it, you're gonna put it online, wait for a little second, drink some coffee. Then you're going to analyze it, or our data analysts are going to analyze it. And then we go over that analysis and we combine the results back with the insights that we already had. And we can kind of say like, okay, the hypothesis that we started with, has it been falsified? What information could we find that disproves it or proves it? And then we tweak it a little bit, which brings us to transform or tell, which is really about transforming your product, service, communication with your new insights. So you put it back into the organization, and then you start to circle anew. Like I said, as a fact-act model and a previous example shows, it's really important to do research. So again, where do you start with doing research? We do qualitative, quantitative research following the 6V model, yet another model. We love our models here. And combining all of these data points from these 6Vs helps us find the red thread and create overarching hypotheses that we will test with smaller test hypotheses. Like the examples that Lotte gave, like, okay, yeah, sure, you have a best practice of adding social proof or adding reviews, but what do we know? What do we see in the data? What do we see from user research? What do we see from psychological research? What can we find in earlier experiments? These all come back in the 6Vs because they're about value. So what company values are important and relevant versus, obviously, you should still look at what the competitors are doing, just to, see that you're not lagging behind. View, what can we find quantitatively in the data, in web analytics, other behavioral data with tools that you use. Validated, what are insights from previous experiments, A/B tests, other forms of validation. Verified, that's what we love to do, doing our little literature research. So seeing what the scientific research, insights, models are applicable to the context at hand. And voice, obviously, I think maybe the most important one. What are your customers saying? And this 6V research we usually do when we start anew with a project, so at a client, because obviously we as consultants work for a bunch of different organizations. So we do this research, but we try to repeat it at least once a year. And we also give this advice to other people to do research at least once a year. But preferably you would like to do little cycles of research, because it prevents two really important things, which is the expert's curse and experience rot. I think these are two things that everybody is very susceptible to, us too. So we also need to be critical of each other's work, of our own work. That's why we keep doing research. And what do we mean with the expert's curse and experience rot? So the expert's curse is, as an owner of your own product, you know exactly how it works, right? You know what the jargon is, so what the features are called and why they are called that way, why people that are buying the product should care about it, how the process works, what's like normal in your domain of selling this product or service. But people, the plebeians of that are sitting at home buying your product, they don't know. Like, they have no clue. They're just there clicking away, thinking what they think is right with the information that they have. And so the expert's curse is really about being so good at something that you accidentally explain it in a way that beginners can't follow. And as people with websites, we're prone to do the same because we know the product so well. We tend to forget how it's like to be not informed about it, to not know anything about it. So doing research, especially voice research, so user research, really helps you to remember, okay, people don't know things that I know, So it's good to remind yourself that you're the expert, other people are not, and you should be able to explain it to the folk in a way that, people sometimes say, explain it like you would explain it to your grandma or to a 5-year-old. It should be
very clear.
Very clear. Experience rots, that's another one. That's when your experience really goes stale and turns into just habits. So you just keep doing what you are used to working, like, oh, we did research once in 2019 and now we're basing everything on that. Or, like marketeers keep pushing urgency banners because it worked really well, even though the audience is way more skeptical now. We are much more aware of dark patterns as, customers, or the brand is positioned right now as premium and urgency feels cheap. So again, context is really important. So actively doing research, 6-3 research, helps you with preventing these expert's curse and experience rot. Like I said, optimization framework helps us bundle the insights into overarching hypotheses, and ultimately, schematically, in a perfect world, this is how it looks like. So if you have a hypothesis-driven CRO program, you do your 6V research, it feeds overarching hypotheses, for example, for motivation, but it could be for ability, attention, motivation, certainty, choice architecture. And then you have these overarching hypotheses that you can test. So for example, our users, because we sell sex toys, our users are more convinced by emotional arguments. Okay, that's an assumption. It's an overarching hypothesis. So with your test hypothesis, which are falsifiable, you're going to try and disprove that belief and see what holds up. And so at the end of the year, you can go back to this framework and see like, oh, this is what we used to believe at the beginning of our year. Does it still hold up, or do we need to tweak this overarching hypothesis? The same with, for example, our users need to feel like they are part of our community. With the media example, okay, what are things that can disprove it, and where does this apply and where does this not apply? So you need to test this, and like I said, we do a lot of A/B testing, which is very quantitative and it shows you what users do. But there are many forms of research. You can have more qualitative data. You can have more, attitudinal data. So what users say instead of what they do. And a lot of times, it should always go together, right? Yeah. You should A/B test, but A/B testing becomes especially interesting if you also put up surveys live while you're doing an A/B test to also test things like sentiment or, okay, we think we're making it easier for our customers. Are they actually implicitly feeling that it's easier? Or, there's so many different ways to feed the 6V data, and you should really definitely look into all sorts of validation. And ultimately, you want to work towards the empirical cycle. So this is an iterative process. Every time, small cycles, bigger yearly cycles, quarterly cycles. Just keep testing, keep fixing your hypotheses, keep doing research. And obviously, like I said at the beginning, the ultimate goal is to just, at the one hand, increase growth, but at the other hand, to learn. And we're really big on learning because we're trained in it and because we love it. And we also really believe, and it's been proving time and time again, that the more that you learn about your customers' behavior and the better substantiated your hypotheses are, the more likely you're to find a winner and to earn more.
Yeah.
So Lotte, why should they hire us?
Just because. Yeah. Because we are the perfect research gatekeepers. And so on the one hand, we have the knowledge about human behavior and the models and the tactics and the theories. And so we can dive in a little bit deeper into what does it mean. So not only looking at the data and say, okay, this is what we see, but actually, why do we see this? And move on a little bit further than pop psychology takes you. And on the other hand, we are trained to do proper research. We know the psychological methods, and we can use this step to learn more about the user's psychology, and also to make the process really clean, so you can trust the outcomes and rely on them more.
Yeah. So are you interested to knowing, this is obviously a little plug, but do you want to know how you can apply more psychology, how to start? You can always reach us. These are our emails. We're obviously also findable on LinkedIn. I think we've been plugged by Convert also a couple times.
Yes.
So it's very easily findable. Obviously, we're linked with online dialogue, so don't hesitate to look for us there. And just, let us know. And I'm also keen to know if there are some questions. So I'm just going to give the mic back to Carmel. We're going to shut this presentation down and see if there are some questions.
Yeah, we
thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I hope you listened. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You guys did a wonderful job, and you did not fall into the trap of using jargon and explaining stuff to us in a poor way. It was all very understandable, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions. A few are about culture and a few are about methodology. So I'll start with the culture questions. The first one is, how do you create a culture of embracing falsification within your team, or even when you're talking to clients within an agency setup?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, context is important. So I think first you need to figure out, I think this question is coming from a place of that maybe they believe that right now their own company or their place that they work on isn't that keen on using this kind of mindset. So first figure out if there are any, is any resistance towards this kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But then ultimately it's just about being better, right? Like, so the stakeholders, do you want to earn more? Okay, then we need to have more critical way of thinking. And if it's really about embedding this mindset, you can go two ways, right? You can do bottom up, top down. So you can start top down talking with stakeholders and saying that this is kind of mindset shift that you want to take and why. But also bottom up, just start with fun brainstorms and asking each other questions. It doesn't have to be very, intricate or hard. Just start with workshops. We do a lot of workshops also with customers, and kind of ask these falsifiable questions, right? Like, okay, let's brainstorm and then let's dissect all of the ideas that we have, and then try to falsify them. What should we use to what metrics should we use that could disprove it? What are different explanations, etc.?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually just following the same cycle. So find out what are maybe some of the barriers that people feel towards experimentation. Do they think it's like an add-on to their additional work? Can you find ways to plug into the work that they already do, and see and to really let them join and let them bring in ideas to make their work better, or their assumptions being tested. So then you find a common ground, and from there exactly you can try to come up with these test ideas together. So you can actually show them you are a researcher or an optimization specialist, and so you just try to find ways that is interesting to the audience you're having. And I think that's the first start. And so don't try to move to the top of the mountain and be like, okay, everyone is embracing experimentation, but take it step by step and see what comes across, and try to get to know your audience better, and then work with them to move up the mountain.
And I think a lot of times, especially with the whole falsification and setting up things beforehand, it sounds like it's more work, which it kind of is, but at the end it's less, when you're more critical in the steps beforehand, you need to think less afterwards. So it makes it, in the end, more, it just makes it faster, the process also. But you need to invest a little bit of time in it.
It sounds like you're saying you have to first do client research to learn how to communicate with them before you can convince them to let you do customer research to figure out how to communicate to your customers.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Another question we have is, do you do unique research for every project that you do, or do you sometimes rely on existing internal or external research?
I mean, it kind of depends on how much time there is also. But preferably we already have so much knowledge, right? And we already do a lot of research. So a lot of research that we've done is active in our minds, in our background, in like everything that we save. But we do try to always do some user research and some literature research when we step into a new branch. And for example, for some reason, we tend to work a lot for companies that sell beds. So we have a lot of research about selling beds and what's important for beds. But then sometimes the companies come from different countries. So then it's important to take cultural differences into account and still do some user research, because their users and their type of bed that they're selling, as an example, is different than what we're already used to. So yes, we do new research always, because it needs to be a little bit more applied to the customer at hand. But we're not gonna ignore everything that we've already done. It's such a huge base that we already have. So sometimes when we just do something quick, or when they want some low-hanging fruits, we're not gonna start with a whole 6-3 research. We're going to start with a lot of the, like ability, attention, choice architecture, which are a little bit more UX driven also. Just start there when you don't have time to do it, and then do some research for the motivation and certainty parts.
Okay, great. That makes sense. And within that, how do you know whether a particular part of your research applies to the entire website or to just one specific part? One example that someone in the chat gave is, if you find out that people are worried about missing out, they want a level of scarcity, how do you know whether to just put that on a landing page, or are you going to put it in the landing page and the checkout and everywhere possible? Is more always better, or do you how do you determine how specific to be?
No, I think that's always also something that you need to test. So the same with the example of the subscribers and the members. We tested it for all the other labels, and we tested it to be true for all the other labels. But it's the same thing if you want to use scarcity or social proof. On one page, it can work. On the other page, it can harm. I have this example from, BetaBet, so it's a bad company. Where we entered product review scores on the lister page, on the product lister page. And this was a very good idea. Users liked it. It was a win on transactions. So we thought, well, let's move that to the product detail page as well. And there it showed a negative result because maybe people are changing their mindset. So on the lister page, this information on what the review score is might have helped them to in their choice and their decision making and narrowing down the choice. But once it came to the detail page, people are already a little bit further down the customer journey. They are a little bit more sure, and maybe other information is needed. For example, more functional information on the product. So you always need to test it, and what works for the shopping cart might not work for the checkout. So no, there's not just one tactic that if you test it correctly or as a win on the homepage, then you can apply it everywhere. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
And it's also, I mean, we're all aware of customer journeys, right? And I think in the customer journey, it's just kind of common knowledge that some pages are for orientating yourself, some pages are more for inspiration, some pages are more directly linked to the decision process, and some are more linked to just going towards the end. So obviously there are some best practices, like you're not going to put a lot of information in the checkout. You want to keep it clean, but you do want to kind of see what works within the cleanness. But here, again, I would really advise to also talk to everybody that's involved with the whole customer process. So we also do sessions with product owners and however the organization organizes themselves, but to everybody that's really involved with different parts of the customer journey, because they know already so much about their customers
at that specific stage.
So you talk with them, you get a lot of insights from them, and then you start with linking, okay, we know that these kinds of things work, we should start and test them there. And then obviously it's really interesting, like, okay, if you have that insight of, for example, social connection, yes, it works really well on the homepage and the lister pages, and that's where we should start testing it. But maybe it also works when you do it in the checkout. Let's just kind of test it. So it's, again, a kind of balance between making sensible choices. Where do you start? What are you going to prioritize based on what you know and what you found out with your research and with the people that already have a lot of knowledge about it? And then try and optimize and be creative also, and try to just do funky stuff sometimes. If you really want to take it to the next level, sometimes, a lot of customers of ours do really, I mean, I don't want to name names, but my favorite test that we've ever done was listed in Airtable as fuck the homepage test, which the actual client of us came up with because they just did the homepage in such a drastically different way that we are used from e-commerce. And it worked really well. And, they really kicked some shins, but then they tested it and it was really fun. So it's about testing. It's about thinking logically and seeing what works and try to, have fun with it.
Yeah. And just to add on that for a little bit, is not every test has to be tested because of implementation. So that's also tapping into the culture, because some tests you just want to know what happens. You want to learn and take that learning into meetings with stakeholders and say, okay, we tried it out. This is what happens. Does this change our view of what we need to do? Or are we deciding that some brand values are more important? Or so it can also help you to get a discussion or something started at the company.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how you're emphasizing both the need for research and also still experimentation to double check those findings. So you've done all of this research and you've done all of this testing. Where does this information live? Whether it's an individual experiment where you find that adding social proof works on the product page, but not necessarily on the landing page, or whether it's a bigger, like across multiple experiments, what you were describing about testing, become a member on multiple different newspapers or magazines. How do you organize that information for yourselves?
This is a really good question. So I'm going to use a slide to kind of, because obviously like legacy is some of the things that we struggle most with, especially when people have a lot of knowledge and then they leave the company and not everything has been documented clearly. So obviously it starts with documentation. So we always use Airtable for the A/B tests. We also try to do as much interlinking within Airtable with so in research tabs, we put all of our research. We're trying to link it to A/B tests to kind of see in the end, like, okay, when we look at lister pages, we see we've done 16 motivation tests and 17 certainty tests. These were the overarching hypotheses. These were kind of the tactics that we used within that overarching hypothesis. This was a winner or it wasn't a winner. So kind of the view that I'm showing right now on the page, you would kind of, if you would zoom out, you would see like the 5 optimization strategies next to each other with a bunch of overarching hypotheses. Sometimes this can also be opportunity solution trees. Maybe some people are familiar with this, which is basically the same process. So you do research and then you have these opportunities, so customer problems that you're trying to solve, and you're going to test them to kind of see like, okay, what is actually an opportunity and what isn't. And then you can kind of zoom out and see like, okay, these arguments and these assumptions hold true for these parts of the customer journey, but they don't really hold true there. And then we always do like a recap at the end of the year, like, okay, these were the overarching hypotheses or the opportunities that we've been testing on. We see that it's really important at the front end of the funnel, but at the end of the funnel, this is way more important. So we should kind of switch our attention towards, their focus on cleanliness and their focus on these types of motivations.
And that gives input for the next year. So if you do a yearly look back at what you've done and using this structure, it's very clear on what works and what doesn't. And then you can use that information to learn, to start testing for the next year and to come up with assumptions and hypotheses and all of that and research into that a little bit more.
So preferably you would have all of your research in the same base. You would want to interlink it as much as possible with other types of research that you've done. And we also use a lot of Google Slides to put everything in order. And then like, okay, this was 2024, now it's 2025, now it's 2026. So I mean, I think it's always a struggle.
It's always a struggle for us as well.
You can never keep everything, you know? And I think right now we're in the popularity of AI. And I think what we're leaning towards
Don't save it there.
is don't save it there, obviously, but for example, within Airtable, I think there are more and more AI functions that help you interlink these things, so it's less handiwork. And I think the biggest, it's really easy when you start somewhere with testing, because then you can work from your ground up. I think it's harder to do it when you've already been testing for a long time and there's a lot of research, and then you have to find structure within everything. So yeah, just try and keep it as much as on the same platforms as possible. Yeah. And when you leave the company, try and think about all of the things that had a lot of value, and really save it for the legacy of the program.
All right, great. That's really, really helpful. Thank you for that. We have one last question to wrap things up as we reach the end of this session, and that is potentially the hardest question. How do you get people to take hiring a psychologist seriously instead of falling into the trap of adding it to someone else's workload?
Well, again, I think this kind of taps into that. I think it's a little bit underestimated what a psychologist is trained to do, because we wouldn't ask a data analyst to do UX research,
Right?
We recognize it as totally different fields, even though obviously the one can do the other, but it's there is some overlap, but it's just different fields. So I think what I find works really well, so I'm interested to hearing what you find works really well, is just using an analogy that might work for the people that you're talking to. Like, okay, but you wouldn't hire a data analyst to do UX research, or you wouldn't hire me as a normal person to fly a plane. Like, it's just like you want to hire the person that's been putting in the most hours into doing this, to support the rest of the team, and to also keep all of those research things, well, not keep them from the others, but to I think it's just the recognition of what a psychologist is obviously sometimes so a little bit underrated, because it is underrepresented, but I think this analogy works.
Yeah, and also like psychology feels very common to everyone, because we see behavior, we look at behavior from others, we look at our own behavior. So we're all kind of mini psychologists in our everyday life. And this is really helpful, of course, for our connection and for all group related processes. But to truly know what that behavior means, you need to know a little bit more. So if you truly want to take your program to the next level and not only look at data, but really know why that is happening, you cannot add that to someone who hasn't researched it, because then you come up with surface level solutions, and you want to have a little bit more depth. And I think you already gave some examples, but it's the same thing for cooking. Everyone can cook, or at least bake an egg or something. And then you have some people who know a little bit better to what ingredients to use, or they can just open the fridge and see, oh, I have these products here, I can make that. But to truly be like a Michelin star chef, you really need to know what ingredients do, how they taste, what flavor it gives, and how it mixes, and what sensation it can give to a person. So you need a little bit more experience than on what food can do.
Yeah, I love that we're comparing ourselves to Michelin stars.
Of course. I'm not. Who else is doing it?
I see no difference. I see no difference. I appreciate
I can't
the different
cook though
analogy.
like a Michelin star chef, so please don't.
Because you haven't trained for it.
No, I haven't trained for it. Yeah, exactly.
So say that people are now ready to hire a psychologist or speak to you more about this. Where is the best place for them to get in touch with you?
I would say LinkedIn. It's
Yeah.
easiest because we've been linked everywhere. We have our we can put up our
Share it one more time.
yes, thank you.
Our email addresses.
And just look up online dialogue.
You'll find us on the webpage.
Yeah, and also I mean, we're quite a small company, so we're very flat. So anyone you speak to from our company is more than capable to helping you further, and we're right there.
Yeah, but feel free to find us on LinkedIn as
Yeah.
well, and just ask a question there, and from there we can take it
For
where
sure.
it's needed.
Perfect. Any final words that you would like to share with all of us?
I really liked it to share a little bit more about our work and hopefully inspire people that it is very useful to have a psychologist and a psychologist way of thinking. So maybe you're not there hiring a psychologist yet, but hopefully we gave some insights and some frameworks that you can use to make it a little bit more data driven and help you.
And I would advise people who are still listening to kind of think about how would I explain my job to other people, because I find that this talk also kind of helps us or inspires us again why we do what we do. And that's it's really interesting to look from, because we're so used to doing what we're doing. It's interesting to kind of look it again, because we're experts curse, to look from it from a different viewpoint. So I would advise everybody to give a little presentation to their friends or their family, like, this is what I do, because it also forces you to think like, oh yeah, why do I do this, and what is important to our job? And it really again kind of narrows your focus on why you think it's important that you do what you do. So it was fun. Thank you. And thank you for we're now kind of scrolling through the chats, and people have spoken so much. It's really nice to see how the community that you build is, it's really nice and good questions. And thank you everybody for the kind words and for joining us.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much again. And thank you everyone who attended. A reminder that there will be a replay available if you missed any part of this. I know that I will be rewatching the replay because there was so much valuable information in there. And we'll see you at the next event.
Thank you, Carmel. Thank you so much.
All
Have a
right.
good day. Bye.